Namaste, everyone. I'm your host, Kiran. Welcome back to Karuna Yoga with Compassion, your weekly dose of inspiration and insight for a more balanced and fulfilling life. In our time on air today, we will talk about two powerful concepts from Asian wisdom that hold remarkable relevance to our fast paced modern world, and they are Abhyasa and Vairagya, the yin and yang of the progress. As always, if you'd like to call, you can call us at 1-877-265-5992. That's 1-877-265-5992 to share your thoughts with us on today's topic. So, we often find ourselves caught in the push and pull of life, striving for goals, nurturing relationships, and seeking personal growth. But how do we do this effectively without feeling the burnout or constantly overwhelmed? The ancient yogic philosophy offers a profound answer in the dynamic interplay of this Abhyasa and Vairagya. Let's break these terms down. Abhyasa, in its essence, means consistent effort, persistent practice, and this unwavering dedication. Think of the steady drip of water that eventually carves through the stone. It's not about these intense bursts of energy followed by exhaustion, but rather a continuous, mindful engagement with whatever is your chosen path. Vairagya, on the other hand, translates to non attachment or detachment. In other words, letting go. It's not about apathy or indifference, but rather about the feeling ourselves from the obsessive clinging to the outcomes. Imagine a kite flying in the sky. It needs a firm string to guide it. But if the grip is too tight and we resist every gust of wind, the kite will likely break. Vairagya is about having that string, but allowing the kite to dance with the breeze. I am actually very thrilled to announce that Adarsh will be hosting an exclusive workshop right here at KARUNA-Yoga this September. And today we are in conversation with him once more, exploring the concept of Abhyasa. And for those of you who are listening today, we want to hear your thoughts on these powerful ideas. How do you find that balance between putting in the effort and letting go of the outcome? The first person to call and share their opinion, we will pass on a complimentary pass to Adarsh's upcoming workshop in September. The number to call us is 1-877-265-5992. And you may find the details of the upcoming workshop on yogawithk.com. Or you can just Google search Karuna Yoga with Compassion and we will pop right up. So here we go. Welcome, Adarsh, again to the show.
Oh, thank you, Kiran.
Can you please speak about the two workshops and what to expect in those?
Yeah, we have a couple of workshops. One is focused on teachers and developing teaching skills. We're going to have some experiential anatomy and palpatory anatomy, which is always popular. So the idea, rather than memorizing a bunch of terms, we're going to go through and learn how to feel on ourselves and with our partners. Such a valuable tool for teachers of yoga or any movement style. Then there's going to also be an art of assisting workshop for teachers as well, and that'll be hands-on and assisted stretching, facilitated stretching, as well as hands-on techniques in developing stability. Then I have a workshop that's for the general public, so just yoga enthusiasts or new yoga practitioners. And we'll have one that's very much focused on strength, stability, because strength is not just raw muscle, but it's a function of developing our center, so our corset and the muscles of breathing. Then the other one is on flexibility, which is always a special interest of mine. As a recovering stiff person myself, I'm always very interested in developing flexibility and, of course, safe systems of developing that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Flexibility is the first term I hear every time we talk about yoga enthusiasts or who just wants to explore the first thing is either they want more flexibility
Yeah.
or they think they're not flexible enough to do yoga. So I think it's a good thing to explore one's flexibility and range of motion, etc. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let me begin our conversation with asking you a primary question, which has been in my mind all through. So yoga is so ancient, and you mentioned in your last conversation with us that you started when you were 19. So I'm curious about what about yoga that kept you going all these years in a way that your entire adult life and now also is dedicated to it. And going back to our topic today, have the concepts of Abhyasa and Vairagya shaped your personal practice and your journey as a yogi?
Definitely. So, just to take the first part, I think the reason I've always stuck with yoga is that I had results, which is kind of interesting. You know, we're talking about non attachment to maybe the results. Well, I think for me, it worked. So, I had insomnia and I was really struggling with just mental health things. And by practicing yoga and just very simple techniques, nothing elaborate at all, it really did work. And I think that by seeing that, wow, yoga can help with this one thing, it started to help with other things, such as flexibility and many other physical attributes. So I think a lot about Abhyasa and Vairagya for a couple of reasons. One is that, like you, I'm a enthusiast of the Yoga Sutras and have read that a lot, and especially that first book, right? So it's something I definitely talk a lot about with students. My own Guruji in Ashtanga Yoga famously talked about Abhyasa, so constant practice, and all is coming. The part about non-attachment, of course, is interesting because we all have some attachment, right? What's the point?
Right, right, right. So, continuing this, we talked about, you mentioned that Abhyasa is a consistent effort. What does that look like at a practical level, especially for someone who's just starting their practice? It could be yoga practice, meditation practice. And are there any simple daily habits that one can adopt?
Yeah. You know, I think that we should be consistent before we try to be heroic. You know, I think that it's typical for people to have sort of a weekend warrior approach where they go and really, you know, give it their all one day per week. And I try to encourage people to incorporate small doses on a daily basis, keep it all very short and simple. And it naturally builds some momentum. You know, you start to crave more and your practice gets longer. And then I have to tell you to stop. Like, okay, that's enough. You're doing too much yoga.
I love the term you used, weekend warriors, because in the studio I do see, and by no
Yeah.
fault of anybody, it's just that when you're in a group, you want to push yourself a bit more beyond your comfort zone, and then you suddenly feel it when you're not with the group alone in your home, nursing
Yeah.
your muscles and pains. So yeah, that's that's where you are. So Abhyasa, when we disintegrate the word into Sanskrit, it actually means it has the roots into the term to sit. Can you elaborate on the significance of this? How does the idea of the sitting with in a practice, even when it's actually uncomfortable, place into its effectiveness?
Yeah. It's so interesting how that changes too. I think when you begin a meditation practice, you will often learn something about the nature of sensations, both physically, emotionally, mental, right? So you learn the nature of this, and the instruction is usually pretty clear about just observing that without too much, labeling. That you can just sit with that experience, and then it inevitably changes. So if we were talking about something like the hamstring stretch in your yoga class, especially for the athletes coming in and they're so stiff in their hamstrings, In the beginning, it feels very painful because you have no other way to identify it, but this hurts. But that attitude begins to change, and it feels good actually at a point, So the people who are doing it and enjoying themselves, it actually feels good. It
Mm.
doesn't hurt. So I noticed the whole relationship with something like yoga or meditation shifts in that way, that there is very little resistance because you really crave the good feeling of doing it.
That's. I was looking at it too. Whenever I take a break, for some reason or the other, it could be ill health or busy work or something. In 3 days, the body automatically starts craving for that
Yeah.
little stretch. And in other words, the after pain, it's a bad word, but not with a negative connotation to it, but
Yeah.
the yummy feeling we get.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And there really is like a cognitive shift that you make, that thing that you were dreading becomes like, you're
Yeah.
craving it.
You're craving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
True. I'll take a moment of pause with you. And for those of you reaching out to you guys who are listening, we are in conversation with Yogi Adarsh Williams, an Ashtanga Vinyasa yogi. And he is coming to Bay Area and hosting 2 workshops at my studio, KARUNA-Yoga with Compassion in Pleasanton. These are open to everyone in the Bay Area. Both are 2-part series. One is open to every enthusiast in the yogi world, and the other one is to all the teachers who are pursuing their teacher training. We'll go deeper in that. And today we are in conversation with Adarsh on the idea of Abhayasa. And I'd love for you to call in, and we are giving away free tickets or free passes to our workshops. So continuing with our conversation, Adarsh, what role does discipline play in Abhyasa? Is that about forcing yourself to do something, or is it a more mindful and gentle form of self-commitment? And I'd like to elaborate here. Mm-hmm. One is rain or shine, you just show up no matter what. And the other is something similar to I'll wake up when naturally my body allows me to wake up and then go. Mm-hmm. And that may mean you're missing out on the morning Abhyasa time or something like that. So how do we find how do we integrate discipline into this particular concept?
Yeah, I think there'll be some discipline required in the beginning, especially to create your structures around this and the new habits and all of that. So there will be some effort required, which is fine because it does become automated pretty quickly. What is it, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks to a habit change? Mm-hmm. So it's not so bad. And it does get infinitely easier because, again, you would be craving that thing. I think ultimately we have to be sensible. For example, if someone is working, Silicon Valley hours and they have a lot of demands, maybe a long commute, then the yoga may fall a little by the wayside, or it may fit more into the weekend warrior, the retreat or whatever. I think that's totally normal. I always encourage my people who can't do a lot just to have that, 10, 15 minute, I'm a sun salutation guy. So just to do those things, just to keep their bodies in that condition, I think is good. But if you're someone who does have the time and you want to indulge in this, then definitely it doesn't take much, and give yourself some permission to take a nap or some kind of easy reward afterwards if you need more sleep. That's what I always recommend for people, this idea of the polyphasic sleep. Just wake up early. I know you do this as well. Wake up early. You can do like your yoga practice and then take a short 20-minute nap afterwards. It's amazing. You feel so great. And you also get an extra day almost in your schedule. So life hack.
Right. There is my personal experience I'd like to share. I have in the studio many students, out of which there is one student who only comes twice a week, Monday and Thursday. And he's been doing that consistently every Monday, Thursday, week over week over week for a year. And then there is such a lot of difference just by doing 2 weeks consistently. And that's where I think discipline and consistency join in. That's beautiful. Yeah. So now that we're talking about discipline and the idea of how to get into the discipline, on the other side of it, there are these pitfalls. So, what are the common pitfalls in your experience that you have seen when you're teaching that people encounter while they're trying to cultivate this abhyasa?
Yeah.
And what's your advice to them to overcome those challenges? And there are real challenges in the mind, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I've been quite I think lucky to have many enthusiastic students. Ashtanga is a very dynamic style of yoga. I think it draws people who are quite dynamic personalities, dare I say, type A achievers, which is great. And I probably fall into that category myself a little bit. However, there can, of course, be an overdoing it, and anything physical can be repetitive and overdone. People are not always sensitive about these things. And I think this is a big issue in any type of physical training where it's not just a rote repetition, but there's a feel, right? You're feeling your body. We went sailing today, and the captain kept telling me to feel the wind. And that was the whole thing. How can you know which way to go? You have to feel the wind. And I think that's important in your yoga practice. Literally, you could say to feel the wind, the prana, and that would be a good guide for you. And it changes quite a bit, right? We're having a full moon right now, so you're going to have a lot
mm-hmm.
of energy for your practice, I hope. But it will also wane. And it's important for us to pay attention to these natural cycles, including our own. How much did you sleep? What have you been eating or drinking? And all of these things will have some effect.
Mm. I can relate to it because, like you said, the hours at work and everything else going
Yeah.
on in life, I fall off the wagon a few days and weeks, and then suddenly it takes a force of nature to come back to the mat. Uh, so and then it's easier to advise others because when somebody, I don't see those students consistently, my regular students in the studio, I tell them, why don't you pick me up and take me to class? That way you will show up and I'll show up both at the same time.
So
Help
your
with both
students
of
will
it.
pick up the teacher? That's
Yes.
perfect. Yeah,
Nobody
why
has
not?
offered that yet, but no, but it's easier to say, hey, show up. But then when it comes to self, it's really difficult. And we do fall off the wagon every now and then. So if you go do that and you feel you got lost, how do you find your way back to the practice? And how can this principle of abhyasa that we're talking about help
Mhm.
us to bring us back to that consistency and meaningful routine that
Yeah.
we want to build?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think simple things, so if I have some, fall off the wagon, so to speak, I would always start back with very easy things, just affirmations and things that I can start to build some momentum. And I think that works for the students as well, that, you can't expect it to all come at once. And yeah, it takes some time to build back up. But yeah, it is always possible. I did want to talk a little bit about Vairagya as well, because I do think that this is always important that we're able to not be so attached. I know for me as a practitioner, I've lived long enough in my yoga practice to see it begin to wane, like I'm on the decline right now. But that's incredibly satisfying actually, because now things that were super easy for me and I couldn't understand why the students struggle, now I
Mm.
struggle. And it's so exciting. Like, oh my God, that's so hard. So, that's an interesting way of seeing it as well, that, these things I was so attached to naturally fall away. That is the nature in itself. Um, so much of this is just, I think, conditioning ourselves toward a long term project that the fruits are subtle. It's not such an obvious like payoff. Now I'm enlightened. It's much more subtle. It's these little moments of enlightenment.
Hmm. So how is this traditional or the modern day studios, in-person studios, where you have the modern guru shishya thing going on, where there's a teacher leading the class and a student coming in? How do you see that manifesting in terms of abhyasa, that we are bringing the discipline into the studio world rather than online, and where you can, I
Yeah.
think the online world is more reversed, as in the student is going and the teacher is waiting. The other way, in the physical world, the studio is open, the teacher is waiting for the students to walk in. There's this shift. In my mind, I think that's the shift. What do you think about that, and how does Abhyasa play in?
Interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the question is, but I would say that there's three things that I think always, build the kind of yoga phenomenon as we know it. The teacher is essential. The teacher is not just the guru, but the teacher is the role model. Maybe for the person, it's their idea of their best self that they want to be, or that they identify on their best days, best moments. So that's great. The guru is there. Then the idea of the practice, that you have your thing that you're doing, and so many ways of practice, right? So whatever you're doing, that thing that's consistently bringing you closer to the yoga. And then the third thing is the community, and things like today, where we're sharing with your audience as part of that yoga sangha, that yoga community, going to the classroom, going to the yoga studio. But we do see so many ways for it to show up online. Obviously, people are so connected through social media and things, and these become the communal ways of sharing. And some of it's just seeing someone do yoga so you don't feel so crazy for doing it yourself in your room. There's other crazy people out there doing it. So shared experience. Those are the three jewels, at least: the teacher, the practice, and the community.
And the community, yes. Last question to you before we go more further into the workshops. Yeah. How does this concept of Abhyasa relate to someone who is beginning their yoga journey versus someone who is an advanced practitioner?
Yeah. Well, you're so good at gamifying your work with students, and I think that's really great. So to me, telling students that this game is so much fun because it is a long-term project. There will be poses and elements of yoga that you're terrible at, and you will love that because that's the hard stuff. And, the easy things, well, that'll be easy. It'll be kind of boring. But I see the students, they develop a real eagerness. They know that it will be a long-term project rather than a short-term fix. And I notice that people who come, at least to my classes, that is often a refrain, that they are looking forward to the long, personalized journey of yoga. Yeah, and they're looking to get into a practice, right? They want this to be like a thing in their life, rather than just like some, odd passing thing.
Right. We were talking about the same thing as to how to build the concept of Abhyasa amongst us teachers in the studio. And we were looking at the student journey. And maybe one of those things could be extending the time of the trial passes which was scientifically proven to be 28 days, so that you give a trial pass out for 28 days, and that habit will build in. Yes.
Totally. Yeah.
And they will get on the path.
Duhigg book. Yeah, I'm totally into that. I think that is totally righteous, because we are training ourselves like little, pets, right? And you just train your mind. This is yoga. You train your mind like that, and then it will do all the cool tricks, like stick to a habit.
So I want to call out the listeners again. You still have one more, I think 2 more minutes or so to win yourself a workshop pass with Adarsh upcoming in September. We will keep doing this every Sunday until we get to September. So the number is 1-877-265-5992. I repeat, 1-877-265-5992. And if you have any thoughts, questions to share, we'll be back with Adarsh again next week, just so you know. If you couldn't think of anything right now, you have a week to come back. And while we have dedicated today's session to the vital force of Abhyasa, this conversation, as you must have felt, is half complete, because the ancient wisdom tells us that Abhyasa, consistent effort, is nothing without its counterpart, which is Vairagya. So next week, we will dive deep into this other side of the coin and the other half of the balance. We'll explore Vairagya not as a state of indifference or apathy, like I mentioned, but as a profound act of liberation. We will uncover what it truly means to let go of this obsessive attachment to outcomes, to free ourselves from the push and pull of success and failure. And we will also discuss how this practice of non attachment can lead to greater peace, true freedom, and more fulfilling life. And I would like to take the last 1 minute with Adarsh to briefly reshare what to expect from the upcoming workshops in September with Karuna-Yoga with Compassion in Pleasanton in your trip with us.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it. Hopefully, we will get to dive into yoga philosophies such as this. So it will not feel only physical. I do believe that the reason we go to yoga class is that we're looking for this, non-physical, non-ordinary experience. So I look forward to facilitating that and sharing some practice time with you and the community at Karuna.
Thank you very much, Adarsh. We'll look forward to another episode of With You next week. And we'll connect with yogis, thinkers, and listeners just like you to discover how Vairagya can be a powerful tool for navigating the pressure of the modern world next week. So join us for a deep dive into the yin of the practice, Vairagya, right here on Karuna Yoga with Compassion. Until then, namaste.